Well, I had free choice of what I was going to talk about this morning. So I'm going to talk about free choice. Free will. It's something we very seldom ever get enough of, so let's just delve into it. You know, a lot of people just give up their free choice in many roles that they play in life. Because we feel that if we did what we wanted to do, we would give up our security. And the thing that we're doing, we think, is going to give us the means by which we can place responsibility for failure or success on some other system, some other person, some other authority figure or institution if we fail. And of course, if we succeed, well, we did it ourselves, didn't we? Oh yeah. If it fails, it's their fault. If it succeeds, it's my success. Unfortunately, other folks don't see it quite that same way. Because they see us as the cause of their failure, and they brought all their success that they have upon themselves. Well, do you know that there's a high price that you got to pay for trading free choice for security? To gain the security, you must hand over to somebody else the authority for whatever it is. And oftentimes that authority is misused as they believe they now have the power to do it. With free choice, one finds themselves the victim of nothing. With free choice gone, we become the victim of the universe. So it seems reasonable that we should exercise great care in handing over our authority to into the lives of other people. And because that could turn out to be the sale of your birthright for a mess of pottage. And if you'll remember the Old Testament story about that, it didn't turn out too well, did it? Anyway, we constantly are faced with choices. And what we do is somehow or other we feel obligated to turn over some of our power to somebody else, to an authority figure, whatever that may be, to a government, whatever, okay? And we forget that the ultimate choice rests with us in relation to God Almighty. And we want to be guided into wise and wonderful things to do in our lives. And if you turn it over to somebody else to tell you what that is, they may or may not be right. Did you know that? Some of our governmental figures could be wrong. Oh my. But what we want is a wise, responsible thought, feeling, and action in our own lives. And I'm here to tell you that each of us has within us that power of choice. And it says that no matter what choice you've made in the past, you can freely change that choice right now. There is no such thing as not being able to go a different direction. You can do it. Now, I know you already know that, but you're aware that you're under no obligation to play any role the way that somebody wants you to play it. You know that you can always think for yourself, and you should know that you must take full responsibility for both your successes and your failures. And knowing that, still we have certain areas of negativity in our life, don't we? It might be lack of money, it might be loss of health, it might be disharmony in a relationship. And even in there, you are consciously choosing to follow the highest precepts of truth that you know. And still these bad things happen. Now that proves that no matter what you do, you're just never in control. Is that right? No. Don't let me mislead you. It only proves that you're still investing parts of your life in precepts that simply just are not in line with the truth. The capital T on that truth. And a powerful truth for finding and weeding out these false precepts is the discovery of what I'm going to call those edicts that pepper your life, that rule your life, as a matter of fact. Edicts. Every one of us has some, so don't turn around and say, well, point your finger at somebody else. Because we all have these edicts, and we all follow them. And some are very wonderful, and some are just plain dumb. The dictionary defines edict as, quote, an order, command, an official public proclamation having the force of law. So you see that not all edicts are given to us by the legislature or city hall. In fact, most of the edicts that each of us follow are cultural traditions, or they are statements made by an authority figure in your life. And very often we find we have never even thought about questioning the wisdom of the edict, because it came from the very fount of wisdom itself. That fount could include doctrines, tenets, creeds, teaching that we got from the Bible, of the Bible, from somebody back in the beginning, somewhere. Today we hear an awful lot of information about the, quote, inerrancy of the Bible. Those who profess this most strenuously are often those who issue endless edicts about how you're supposed to think, how you're supposed to act. And let me tell you that no matter how good their motive is, what they're doing is still playing that old ancient game of control. They'll extend their hand to you and say, hey, here you go. You can have security with me. Take my hand. I'll give you security. And I'm going to keep you in the good graces of God for the rest of your life. All you have to do is just yield your free choice of thought, feeling, and action to me. I think all of you have experienced that at some time or another. Well, this power-wielding, conformance-demanding way of getting it good with God does not and cannot hold up to the teachings of the very Bible they profess to know so very, very well. It is, in fact, that Jesus himself very often and with great spirit warned us against following that type of edicting groups. In his time, as in any time in history, there were groups that just knew God's will so down pat that they could set up this really neat set of edicts and activities. But you know what? Even doing that, bitter controversy in Jesus' time raged between two sects, the Pharisees and the Sadducees. Each one of those groups claimed divine knowledge to real truth. Now, at the time of Jesus, the Pharisees had the upper hand, and their rules were proclaimed to be the law. In the midst of this, here comes Jesus to teach us the humbling lesson that we don't know everything. Oh, that's hard to learn, isn't it? When you were 18, you knew everything. By the time you were 21, you wondered how in the world you ever thought that in the first place. Anyway, everything we accept as gospel edict just ain't necessarily so. and to be ready to make changes anytime you find out that the old edict is not doing the job it claims itself to do, is what you're looking at. Now, of the several events I could choose to remind you of in this area, I've selected just one. It's recorded in all three Gospels, well, the three of the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And not much got such wide agreement or recorded. So when you put it in three times, you gotta know that there's something there is really interesting, it's important, and it's worthy of your prayerful consideration. Now here's the event as Matthew told it. It's in the 12th chapter. You want to follow along, the first through the 14th verses. At that time, Jesus went through the grain fields on the Sabbath. His disciples were hungry, and they began to pluck ears of grain and to eat. But when the Pharisees saw it, they said to him, "Look, your disciples are doing what it's unlawful to do on the Sabbath." And he said to them, "Have you not read what David did when he was hungry and those who were with him? How he entered the house of God and ate the bread of the presence, which is not lawful for him to do. And nor for those who were with him. Only the priest could eat this bread of the presence. Or have you not read in the law how on the Sabbath the priests in the temple profaned the Sabbath and are guiltless? I tell you, something greater than the temple is here. And if you had known what this means, I desire mercy and not sacrifice, you would not have condemned the guiltless. For the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath." Then he went on from there and entered their synagogue, and behold, there was a man with a withered hand, and they asked him, "Is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath?" So that they might accuse him. He said to them, "What man of you, if he has one sheep and it falls into a pit on the Sabbath, will not lay hold of it and lift it out of the pit? Or how much more value is a man than a sheep? So it is lawful to do good on the Sabbath." Then, and he's already made them mad. You understand this? I mean, they really are boiling over at him. And so he says to this, he said to the man, "Stretch out your hand." And the man stretched it out, and it was restored whole like the other. But the Pharisees went out and took counsel against him how to destroy him. That's what you do when you violate the edicts. Yes, indeed. But could anything be clearer than this as far as you're concerned about the Bible? Or about edicts that you're following? Don't trust an edict just because some authority figure has told you it's the way to do it. And I don't mean that no matter who that is. Not even me, of course. Yeah. Test it. Test it. Listen, if it's not love-provoking on your own part, if you don't feel love in yourself as you do this thing, it's not going to produce fruit of good for all concerned, either for yourself or others. So the best thing to do, if you can't do anything else, is just withdraw your dedication to that edict. Neither follow it nor damn it. So in this case, Jesus, the Pharisees, and the wisest leaders of the day had simply misinterpreted the law, and they'd set up these edicts to enforce and legitimatize their interpretation. They declared their edicts to be the law in place of the law itself. Now the people had so completely given the Pharisees authority over them for secure feeling of oneness with God that no one dared question or break the edicts. Not until Jesus came along anyway. Well, Jesus broke the edicts, and the people then made an amazing discovery. These edicts were not law after all. The real law was not broken. And you know what? The Pharisees were powerless to do anything directly to Jesus over it. What the people found out was that these edicts were the product of false standards, and they could not be valid except when people were afraid to look beyond the edict. When you're afraid of losing your security or of not having to take responsibility for anything that happens because you followed the law. I followed the law, so whatever happened, that's their fault, not mine. Well, on an outer level, you can get into all kinds of thought traps and miss the essential lesson that Jesus taught. Oh, I want to be real clear about one thing. Jesus was not advocating, and I certainly don't advocate breaking any duly enacted law. I don't care if it was passed by the legislature or the city hall or even had been adjudicated by the courts. Don't break it. Because you see, our system of law provides a mechanism for lawful change. So I advocate using those mechanisms. And really, I can't think of any law in the United States is so odious or repressive that breaking the law is required to be free in your consciousness. At the very least, let me assure you that religious belief is no defense for a felonious act. And it shouldn't be. The perpetrator of an unlawful act must be prepared to endure the consequences of that act. In a very real sense, what we're talking about is not the goodness or the badness of any enacted law with its consequences. We're talking about those even more binding cultural traditions and inner roles that rule our behavior, our thoughts, and they can be done within the law. And this is very important. Enacted law only governs the outer actions. We can act within the law and still live a life of fear, anguish, and limitation. What we think about the law or how we feel about the law are our own individual choices. Though the enacted law can, to a degree, manipulate your outer actions, you can only be manipulated in the inner, reactive way when you, through your thoughts, allow yourself to be manipulated. In other words, law doesn't govern your actions or reactions. They only set limits or standards for them. Only your thought can govern your response or reaction to any circumstance. So the question I think is most important here is, what is it that's now governing your thought? If you truly believe the teachings of Jesus, then you will know that nothing governs your thoughts. That you have free will. You can do whatever you choose, but you have to be prepared to suffer the consequences of that, no matter what they may be. Laws help us to govern our actions at the physical level, but only principle can give us understanding at all levels of thought, action, and feeling. You know, Paul, great Apostle Paul, he dealt with this idea. He told us, when we're one with Christ, we are above the law. Now, he didn't mean we could break the law with impunity, even though our motives may be pure. To be above the law, in Paul's meaning, is to be beyond fear. Sometimes we are filled with fear, anger, anxiety if following the law. He's saying, forget that. Live within the law without fear. You get beyond fear by knowing God and God's will. Knowing that God's will is expressed in unchanging, unchangeable principle of universal good. It is not willful courage that takes you beyond fear. It's just simply understanding that there is a way, which we call the way of the Christ, that offers you what you're looking for inwardly, so that your thoughts will be in harmony with the Christ, which in turn bring feelings and actions that give rise to joy, prosperity, and wholeness, both inwardly and outwardly. What that means is that your consciousness is now set so that how you observe the things that are going on, you go back to principle rather than to the old edicts that used to be there. And I think that's what Jesus was demonstrating with his run-in with the Pharisees. He dared to question the edict. And he did it by going back to the law and showing them that their edict was inconsistent with the principle. Indeed, the principle is, as he stated it, the Sabbath is made for man, not man made for the Sabbath. Now, what is this principle that I'm talking about? Margaret described it beautifully in the meditation. The principle is simply love. What basis in love could there possibly be for any edict of negativity in your life? What says to you that you've got to feel bad when things go awry? Or that you must fret and get angry? Or that says that you've got to avenge evil with evil or hurt with hurt? What is it that says you've got to do that? If you can't believe you should destroy, excuse me, if you can't believe that you should destroy the evil's edicts of negativity by the logic of love, then Jesus said, hey, do it for the works. Yeah. When you carry out an edict of negativity, who suffers? You got that right. The thumb points everywhere. You betcha. You suffer the anger, the pain, the evil, the separation, the disharmony. I was amused and rather surprised yesterday when we received our issue of, what is the name of the magazine? Good Housekeeping. And normally, I don't read the Good Housekeeping magazine. but there was one there by Michael J. Fox, and I thought, oh, look at that, see what that said. And I found the greatest lesson in getting rid of edicts that I have ever found in my whole life. Let me just pass on a little bit to you here. They said, they asked the question, how do you find the drive to do all this? You know, you're still working, you're starting on a new thing. Tell me about the spiritual side of your life. Obviously, you tap into something that gives you a lot of strength. Has that shifted over time? Michael says, this positivity that I feel is based on a belief, and it's shapeless and amorphous. But I know it's better to be good than to be bad. It's better to ponder the possible than to rue the impossible. There's the saying, my happiness grows in direct proportion to my acceptance and in first proportion to my expectation. And that's what I live by. They ask him about it. Well, okay, you got kids. What? I think he has 4 of them. Three of them are adults and one's a kid, I guess. And he said, well, these are my life lessons. I mean, he lists 7 of them, but I just want to read 2 of them for you. He says, teach your children well. What I want my kids to understand about life is put in more than is expected to take out, and take out less than you want. And enjoy life as much as I do. Look at the choices you have, he says. Not the choices that have been taken away from you. In them, there are whole worlds of strength and new ways to look at things. When he asked him how he handled his Parkinson's disease, he simply said, "It is what it is, and I have to overcome it with joy." With joy. He says his life is filled with looking for ways to make his joy complete. And you know what, ladies and gentlemen? That young man has pretty good grasp, doesn't he, of the truth. Do you have to belong to Unity to know the truth? Absolutely not. It helps because we're all time preaching the same thing. You know, we don't mix up with all our metaphors, but this is the same. You can live your life with joy, or you can live it with pain and sorrow. The question is, what are you going to choose for yourself? It's not a matter of what happens to you. It's a matter of how you feel about or how you respond to that which is your life. How do you correct something that's wrong? By cursing it? No. By working constructively to correct it. So the edicts that you grew up with, and all of us had some of them. I think I've told you many times that my edict was, "Son, you're not worth a hill of beans." My daddy, yeah, he did that. He said that. And that was an edict for me for a long time. I thought I was worthless. Until one day I said, well, I wonder how big that hill of beans is. And I wonder how much it weighs. And I went to the store and I said, well, you know, a pound of beans is a nickel. This was many years ago. But there's 1,000 pounds of beans. I'm worth quite a bit. You see? You can change your edict. You can change your life. You can choose to have joy and peace and love and wholeness. Or you can keep on doing what others have been doing. Make your choice. Bless you.